Each morning, real setups are broken down with entry strategies and technical reasoning behind every trade. This is today's best trade setups with Verified Investing.
Welcome to today's best trade setups. My name is Benjamin Poole, head trader here at Verified Investing. Yesterday was a wild ride. If you guys were with me, I want to say thank you so much. If you guys are just joining me today, welcome to another episode of today's top trades. Google was a wild ride yesterday. It had that topping tail. I ended up entering that for a day trade short, based on the fact that it had done over a 50% Fibonacci retracement. I ended up taking a loss on that, but that loss was actually a win because I was a lot more out of the money than I really wanted to be. Finally closed back below the topping tail, but I have some key technical resistance levels that Google is now getting up to if Google wants to continue to push. We're going to go over the AMD chart, and then I have some short levels for Nvidia. It did have earnings yesterday, so this is only a day trade shortable level, but should be some pretty significant resistance. So let's go ahead and jump into the charts. The first chart I'm going to go over right now is AMD. Here's what happened with AMD. So we've been monitoring AMD. I have this long-term trend line going back from the highs of 2021, secondary pivot from the highs of 2024. I've drawn a trend line connecting those two pivot highs, and I have price action potentially getting all the way up to $274.87. Could pierce that level. Oftentimes, price action does like to pierce a key trend level. However, price action then should get rejected. A couple things I'm noticing on AMD if I zoom in on the charts. I had this good buy level at $224.64. It flushed there. A couple things I'm monitoring now that this has already been filled. You had a breakdown of this upswing trend line. So what I've done again is connected this low pivot from the 6th of October, secondary pivot from the 7th of November, created this trend line, and look at what happened. Price action actually got closed below, and then it actually closed below the lowest point, this confirming that it's a potential downtrend. If you were shorting this on a swing trade basis, this is where you could actually enter the trade based on the fact that at $232.10, you're right back to that pivot point or that upswing trend line. That is a retrace to the scene of the crime. If price action does get above that level, your next level of resistance is going to be this gap fill at $240.44. If we confirm inside of that, price action then would regain the upward momentum and could again head up to $274.87. If we get a flush out today in AMD, $218.09 is where I'm looking to go long. This is a day trade on a 15-minute closing basis. I would stop out of this, knowing that here's the second or the next gap fill in the charts at $203.45. AMD is heading higher today based on the earnings reports that happen with Nvidia. So a little bit more bullishness is in the markets, which is why it's heading up a little bit today. SMH is another chart that we're watching. It also confirmed a potential breakdown. My potential short level yesterday was about $200 or $335. It got close to that level. Now it's actually trading inside of this parallel channel. So what I've done is I've connected the pivot low from the April lows, secondary pivot right here from the 7th of September, third hit right here from the 7th of November, finally broke and confirmed below it. So technically, this is a downtrend. Price action is back above this upsloping parallel channel or the lower end of this upsloping parallel channel. So this could be a swing trade short level, knowing that similar with AMD, if price action confirms back inside of this parallel channel, then it could head up to the midline around $370. If price action then continues to get some upward momentum, you're looking at about $394 to $400 on SMH. There's another hot stock, SNDK, that's been extremely volatile lately. I know there's been a lot of questions on this. Where would I enter this for a day trade or a swing trade? You can get $10, $15, $20 moves within a day and then pullbacks. This thing is a wild mover, so I do have some key levels on SNDK. Gap fills. Here's a gap fill in charts. So what happened is price action got bid up, and it closed at $265.88. You have people who thought this was a great buy level, and so they're stuck in this trade. Then price action opened up at $257.14, creating this gap in the charts. If price action heads up to $265.88, these sellers, or excuse me, these buyers who were stuck in here, because they were so far out of the money, once price action gets back up into that level, they're likely to cut their losses, sending the price action down. What we want to do is we want to jump on the tail end of that and say, hey, thank you so much for taking your profits or reducing your shares. We're going to ride that down with you and take advantage of that. You could get a 3, 4, 5, even as much as a 6% move on the downside with SNDK. Price action needs to get up to that level first, but $265.88 is that short level. This is where price action got to yesterday, $257.14. Another thing that I'm monitoring on Sandisk, similar with the other charts, look at this upswing trend line. What I'm doing is connecting low pivot points. So the 14th of October was the first pivot. Connect this pivot right here, this group, price action consolidated right above it, then it hit again, and then again, and then again. You can see how strong this upswing trend line is, which means that every time that price action hits on this upswing trend line, the weaker it gets. If price action breaks this and confirms, you're going down to $194.75. If it heads to the upside, you could go back to this pivot top around $283. I don't think that's going to happen before we finally break down, get at least down to $194.74 before getting a nice bid to the upside. If we lose this pivot, then we've got a little bit more price action at $176, and then the secondary pivot right here at $167. That would be a pretty substantial fall. There will likely be a lot of buyers picking this up at a 40% discount if you can get that kind of a drop. MU is another stock that I was mentioning yesterday. This ended up hitting around noon, and I didn't have my eyes on this thing. It had a pretty good bounce, and now it's continuing higher. I do have a short level for MU if it does decide it wants to run to the upside. Check out MU. This was my long level yesterday, gap fill. So what happened is you had these people who were selling this stock at this level, looking at a potential short. Price action then bolted a higher, and then as price action gets back into this level, the short sellers are now covering and then able to drive that price all the way up at $218.03. And look at where MU is trading now, $232.51. This would have been a great short level. I have a couple different resistance levels as well. $241.95 would be that resistance level. If it can get up to that level, I am a short. I'm going short on this, knowing that we still have this topping tail that's in play. $250.02 is that 50% Fibonacci retracement. This is more of a swing trade. And then $260.58, if price action closes above that on a daily closing basis, that is your stop out. This $241.95 is a day trade short level. I'm not looking to put in 10, 15, 20% of my portfolio in order to take advantage of this bigger move. Again, short level on a daily time frame. What I'm also noticing is similar price action with the other couple stocks that I'm mentioning. You've got this beautiful upsloping trend line where support, where price action on this support line has gotten pretty decent bids, finally started to break down, close below it, never confirmed below it. It would have had to close below this low pivot point, which price action actually got a bid above, which is why price action is heading higher. We reattack this upswing trend line, and MU could go up and hit this 250.02 level. Google, again, was another stock that I was mentioning. It's trading at $304.92. It had news that the Gemini 4 came out, and apparently this is going to be the thing that saves or continues the upward momentum for Google. I do have some key resistance levels on this chart. $310 is where I'm looking. When price action gets up to this level, it should get a pretty sizable pullback. Here was that topping tail that I was mentioning on Google. On Google, I was also mentioning that we did have a sell-off in the market. So this topping tail, although it is a good topping tail, it's not as powerful as some of the other ones. I did try to trade this on a daily, day trade level. However, I got stopped out of it for a small loss. price action continued a little bit higher. And now I'm glad I stopped out of this. This was not a swing trade. Your stop out level would still be a daily closing basis above $293.95. My short level today is $310, a pierce of that, and a daily closing basis, or a 15-minute closing basis above that level is where I would look to exit that trade and take my losses. You still have this beautiful upsloping trend line on Google that goes back to the COVID lows of 2025. Look at how price action was supported. Once price action got below it, it was resistance. It has peaked above it. However, price action is still likely to come back in. And if price action can get below this upsloping trend line, then you are likely to see a little bit more of a rollover in Google. All right, let's go ahead and go into Nvidia now that I'm running out of a little bit of time. Similar to other stocks, I was mentioning gap fills. So here was a gap in the charts at $199.05. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control J, create this trend line. $199.05. There were a lot of buyers in Nvidia, and then all of a sudden the following day, price action ended up closing 2.5% lower. And then look at this price. It ended up coming down even more, almost as much as 10% to the downside. When price action gets into this $199.05, these people who were bullish on Nvidia were out of the money about 10%. And so looking to cut their losses and send this stock down if it can get up to this level. This $98.70 was where price action got in the post market yesterday. It got close to that gap fill, but if price action does fill that gap, you should get a lot of selling pressure. The next resistance level, again, another gap fill, is 206.88. If price action does get up to this level, this would be an add level. And I would actually be adding all the way up, knowing how far down Nvidia got. So if price action can get back up to 206.88, you should see a lot of selling pressure there. Thank you so much for watching. Gareth Soloway is going to be going over the September jobs data. It was a lot weaker than I think that people thought. He's also going to be talking about rate cuts and what the implications are for the markets on that front. If you guys enjoyed this, please make sure you're sharing with your friends, you're liking, subscribing, following, ringing that bell so you can get notified when we go live every morning at 8:45. And again, you want to stay tuned to my trading game plan. Garrett's going to be going live in less than 3 minutes. You don't want to miss that. And that's what I have for you guys. We'll see you guys next time in the charts. You guys have a great rest of your day. Take care.